black CEO kicked out of her own hotel. 9 minutes later, she fired the entire staff. What if the woman who built a multi-million-dollar luxury hotel is kicked out of her own establishment, humiliated by her own staff, for no reason other than the color of her skin? Kara Matthews wasn't born with a silver spoon. She was raised in a modest Chicago South Side apartment, where her mother worked double shifts as a nurse and her father drove a city bus. The lessons of resilience were etched into her from childhood. The world doesn't owe you anything, Kara. You earn your place. Those words echoed in her mind as she clawed her way through a world that often tried to box her in because of her race and gender. At 38, Kara had built the Crown Heights Hotel, a luxury haven in downtown Chicago that rivaled the city's finest establishments. It wasn't just a hotel, it was her legacy. The building stood tall, its sleek glass facade reflecting the vibrant pulse of the city. Inside, every detail was a testament to Kara's vision. Plush velvet chairs in deep jewel tones, artwork celebrating black culture adorning the walls, and a staff trained to treat every guest like royalty. Kara had poured her heart into this place, not just for profit but to create a space where everyone, especially those who felt invisible elsewhere, could feel seen, valued, and respected. Kara was a force. Her warm brown skin glowed under the soft lighting of any room she entered, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She carried herself with the grace of a queen, but the grit of a fighter. She'd faced her share of obstacles: investors who doubted a black woman could run a luxury hotel, vendors who raised their prices when they saw her face, and employees who questioned her authority behind her back. But Kara didn't bend. She'd built her empire brick by brick, and the Crown Heights was her crown jewel. That evening, Kara arrived at the hotel after a grueling week. Her schedule had been relentless. Meetings with investors, a keynote speech at a women's leadership conference, and a community outreach program to mentor young black entrepreneurs. She was exhausted but invigorated, ready to spend a quiet night in one of her own suites, soaking in the fruits of her labor. Her tailored navy blazer and silk blouse were slightly rumpled from the day, but her posture remained impeccable. She walked into the lobby, expecting the usual warmth from her staff. Instead, she was met with an icy chill. The lobby of the Crown Heights was a masterpiece of elegance. Marble floors, cascading chandeliers, and a grand piano that played soft jazz on weekends. But tonight, it felt like a battlefield. Kara's heels echoed in the quiet space as she approached the front desk. Emily, the receptionist, a young white woman with a tight ponytail and a forced smile, barely looked up from her computer. "Good evening, Emily," Kara said, her voice warm but firm, the kind of tone that invited respect without demanding it. Emily's fingers froze on the keyboard. She glanced up, her eyes narrowing slightly, and said nothing. Kara's smile faltered. She noticed the concierge, a middle-aged man named Greg, whispering to a bellhop across the room. Their eyes darted toward her, then away. The air felt heavy, charged with something Kara couldn't quite name. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Emily finally asked, her tone clipped, almost patronizing. Kara blinked, caught off guard. "Ma'am?" She'd hired Emily 6 months ago, trained her personally, and made a point to know every staff member's name. Emily knew exactly who she was. Kara's chest tightened, but she kept her composure. "I'm Kara Matthews. I own the hotel. I'm just here for a late-night check-in," she said, her voice steady but laced with an edge of disbelief. Emily's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sorry, ma'am," she said, her tone dripping with insincerity. "We can't let you stay here. You'll have to leave." The words hit Kara like a slap. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. The lobby seemed to shrink, the walls closing in. She glanced around, searching for an explanation. The other staff members, Greg, the bellhop, even the bartender wiping down glasses, avoided her gaze. Their silence was deafening. "Excuse me," Kara said, her voice rising slightly, though she fought to keep it calm. "This is my hotel. I built this place. What are you talking about?" Emily gestured toward the door, her movements sharp and dismissive. "We have instructions to refuse service." Kara's mind raced. Instructions? From whom? She'd never issued such a directive. Her heart pounded, a mix of shock and anger bubbling up. Before she could demand answers, a security guard, a burly man named Carl, appeared at her side. He didn't meet her eyes, but his stance was clear. He was there to enforce Emily's words. "Ma'am, you need to leave," Carl said, his voice low but firm. Kara's hands trembled, not from fear but from rage. She was being treated like an intruder in her own home. The disrespect was palpable, the racism so blatant it felt like a physical weight. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. The staff's cold stares, the whispers, the way they stood together against her, it was a coordinated betrayal. She didn't know why, but she knew this wasn't a mistake. With every ounce of dignity she could muster, Kara straightened her spine and walked toward the exit, Carl trailing behind her. The glass doors slid open, and the cool Chicago night air hit her face. She stepped onto the sidewalk, the neon sign of the Crown Heights glowing above her. Her hotel. Her dream. And she'd just been thrown out. Standing on the sidewalk, Kara felt the weight of the moment crash over her. The humiliation was searing, but she refused to let it break her. She'd faced worse, bankers who laughed at her business plan, colleagues who questioned her competence, strangers who assumed she didn't belong. This was just another battle, and Kara Matthews didn't lose battles. She pulled out her phone and dialed her lawyer, Marcus Tate, a sharp-minded attorney who'd been with her since the hotel's inception. "Marcus," she said, her voice steady despite the fire in her chest, "I need you to draft termination letters. Effective, immediately." "For who?" Marcus asked, his tone cautious. "Everyone," Kara said. "The entire night staff at the Crown Heights. Emily, Carl, Greg, the bellhop, everyone who was complicit. I want them gone by morning." Marcus didn't hesitate. "I'm on it." "But Kara, what happened?" She took a deep breath, the cold air grounding her. "They kicked me out of my own hotel. They treated me like I didn't belong. I won't let that stand." Within 9 minutes of being escorted out, Kara had set the wheels in motion. By the time she hung up, Marcus was already drafting the paperwork. Kara wasn't just firing her staff, she was reclaiming her power. She stood on the sidewalk, the city buzzing around her, and made another call, this time to her PR team. "We're going public," she told them. "I want the world to know what happened tonight." By morning, the story had exploded. A local news outlet caught wind of the incident, and within hours, it was trending on X. "Black CEO kicked out of her own luxury hotel," screamed the headlines. Social media erupted with outrage, hashtags like #JusticeForKara and #CrownHeightsScandal trending nationwide. Posts flooded in, some from former guests who praised Kara's vision, others from people sharing their own stories of workplace discrimination. Kara didn't shy away from the spotlight. She held a press conference outside the Crown Heights, her voice clear and unwavering. "Last night, I was humiliated in my own hotel," she said, cameras flashing around her. "But this isn't just about me. It's about every person who's been made to feel like they don't belong. I built the Crown Heights to be a place of inclusion, and I failed to ensure that my own staff upheld that vision. But I'm correcting that now." The public response was overwhelming. Supporters rallied behind her, while critics, some of whom questioned whether she'd overreacted by firing the entire staff, fueled heated debates. But Kara didn't waver. She knew the truth. The incident wasn't an isolated mistake. It was a symptom of a deeper problem, one she was determined to address. The twist came not in the firings or the media frenzy, but in what Kara did next. Instead of letting the incident define her or her hotel, she turned it into a catalyst for change. She hired a new team, prioritizing diversity and inclusion in every role. She partnered with local organizations to create mentorship programs for minority employees, offering training in hospitality, leadership, and entrepreneurship. She brought in experts to lead racial sensitivity workshops, ensuring that every staff member understood the weight of their actions. But Kara went further. She launched a nationwide initiative called Hospitality for All, a campaign to address systemic racism in the service industry. She spoke at conferences, appeared on talk shows, and wrote op-eds, sharing her story and calling for accountability. The Crown Heights became a model for change, its reputation not tarnished but elevated as a beacon of progress. Kara also made a bold move. She issued a public apology to anyone who had ever felt unwelcome at her hotel. She offered reparations in the form of free stays and mentorship opportunities for those who'd experienced discrimination. The gesture was unprecedented, and it cemented her legacy as a leader who didn't just talk about change but lived it. Months later, the Crown Heights was thriving. The new staff was a vibrant mix of backgrounds, each member trained to embody Kara's vision of true hospitality. Guests raved about the hotel's warmth, its commitment to inclusivity, and the way it felt like more than just a place to stay, it was a community. Kara's mentorship program had already launched the careers of several young Black and minority entrepreneurs, some of whom were now opening their own businesses. Kara stood in the lobby one evening, watching as families checked in, couples laughed over drinks, and staff members greeted every guest with genuine warmth. The pain of that night still lingered, but it had fueled something greater. She'd turned a moment of betrayal into a movement, proving that resilience wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving. As she looked out at the city skyline through the lobby's glass walls, Kara felt a quiet pride. She hadn't just reclaimed her hotel, she'd reclaimed her power. And in doing so, she'd shown the world what it meant to stand tall, even when the ground beneath you shakes. The Crown Heights Hotel became more than a luxury destination, it became a symbol of hope. Kara's story inspired countless others to speak out against injustice, to demand respect, and to build spaces where everyone could belong. Her legacy wasn't just in the bricks and mortar of her hotel, but in the lives she changed, the conversations she sparked, and the movement she ignited. And every night, as the chandelier cast its golden glow across the lobby, Kara Matthews walked through her hotel, her head held high, knowing she'd built something unbreakable.